Let me warn you beforehand, you may find me saying Ghostwire Tokyo should have been a survival horror game over and over and over again. To be frank, this sentence summarizes the whole concept of the game. I don't care how, whether it be in style of Evil Within, PT or Silent Hill, I don't care. But Ghostwire Tokyo is one of the games with a huge wasted potential by having an FPS action gameplay. Art direction is so superb and unique compared to the other titles, it makes you wanna read some Junji Ito works, watch some Japanese horror movies, summon a Japanese bald man looking turtle called Kappa. Tango Gameworks did quite a job here, presenting an atmosphere of Japanese style horror, myths and daily life, but there is nothing to be afraid of in the game, so the whole art direction makes you say, this is cool, I wish this was a horror game. Some of you think, this game doesn't have to be a horror title. Well, you're right. But then it should at least have a decent combat, maybe platforming mechanics or deeper story, challenges and stuff. If you think about it, you might also realize the impact of the game just by looking around you. Have you seen people talking about the game for more than 3 or 4 days? Of course, a closed launch date with Elden Ring also has its own disadvantages. But still, I don't think it's just that. It just makes me sad. Who decided to make Ghostwire Tokyo a Japanese Dying Light? Who decided this? I mean, it's not a correct thing to say it's Japanese Dying Light, since the game doesn't have that kind of platforming mechanics. A studio formed by one of the masters of horror genre, Shinji Mikami, shouldn't have done such mediocre, repeating combat where player tries to defeat headless kawaii high school girls without breaking a sweat. It should have been more, much more. Ghostwire Tokyo takes us to the heart of Tokyo, known as Shibuya region, where Persona 5 takes place. A mysterious figure known as Hanya turns people into spirits and summons ghosts, demons and Japanese folklore creatures into Shibuya. Well, the game carries Tokyo by its name, but players can only travel around Shibuya, so don't expect to fully experience Tokyo, nor going to Akihabara to see some maid spirits or ghouls. Though the atmosphere, streets and ambience is quite bullseye, I need to say, around 70 to 80% accurate of actually Shibuya, as players can travel to Ebisu, which is close to Shibuya, and to Yoyogi Park and Meiji Shrine at the borders of Shinjuku. Our main character, basically the most uninteresting main character of all titles combined, a typical Japanese dude with a typical Japanese look, who literally dies at the first scene but then rescued by a spirit who knows how to handle these phenomena, granting our character ability to fight against these slender men and slender women and slender fat men by shooting wind, water and fire elementals from the tip of our fingertips. Does it sound interesting? I hope it does, because the actual combat gets super boring and repetitive quite fast. So I started the game on hard difficulty, as my aim was to struggle at combat, normal threats and bosses, hoping to overcome these obstacles by using whatever our boring character has in his own arsenal. But no, hard means that the enemies have a larger HP pools only. Their damage is quite similar to both in normal and hard, meaning our character literally dies if he receives around 2 or 3 hits from his enemies, while hard means shooting more wind, water and fire bullets or arrows, giving this bullet sponge feeling to the players. Difficulty change doesn't grant a deeper gameplay experience, but rather just dull combat. During the combat, enemies tend to walk towards us quite slowly in most of cases, but just because they are bullet sponge, sometimes they force us to either dodge or guard their attacks. When they receive enough damage, so to say, their core becomes exposed to cut their ties to the real world. All of these animations effects are quite charming, but all of these mechanics lose their charm quite quickly. As I mentioned before, we have the power of wind, water and fire at our fingertips. These sounds quite cool, right? Well, they're actually pistol, shotgun and maybe grenade launcher disguised as elements. Wind, having the least amount of damage, is the fastest damage dealing attack, while water has a wider hitbox that can hit in a line, and fire, being the best and the most useful, basically has a grenade launcher effect. Its blast radius gets bigger by each second of charging before releasing this bad boy. At some point of the story, players gain the ability to use talismans, work just like wind, water and fire bullets, but they rather inflict paralysis or grant stealth, and they need to be purchased from your local Nekomata shop. Paralysis Talisman helps by the stall combat, letting you to stun a group of enemies and destroy them with a single fire blast. But beside that, I don't remember a time that I used Stealth Talisman. Even if you play on hard, you don't need to. You can just quickly heal, relocate yourself, take out your talisman to stun enemies, shoot arrows, elements, etc. This makes me quite sad. All of this wasted potential and all these Shiba Inus around Shibuya, they make me sad. We could have had a Shiba Inu as a pet, leveling that cute destroyer of souls, giving orders and stuff. At least this dull combat could have been a tad bit more exciting than it is now. Whole main story takes around 10 to 12 hours, while completing the all achievement takes around 40ish hours. Collecting all valuables, gathering all 240,000 spirits scattered around the map, doing side quests, gathering all of those spirits do feel like a chore. But I advise you to do side quests which are way better than the main story. The reason is Japanese folklore and tale-based content. Let me explain you this. I studied Japanese right after I graduated from college, and in Japan my graduation project was about Japanese folklore, and of course this was just a cover to hide my research about scary but yet interesting Japanese demons, imps and all other spooky stuff. And man, there are hundreds of them. From forgotten and thrown tools that turn into demons to hunt nobles to toilet ghosts that looks at the masterpiece that you bring to life and give you a kiss on the cheek. Ghostwire Tokyo handles lots of these folklore elements by its side quests, while brandishing the atmosphere with its unique art direction. It made me think, maybe this game should have been like a Ghostbusters Japan kinda game, without all of this uninteresting main story crap. Fighting against Japanese folklore elements, maybe demons and ghosts, protecting lovely Japanese people while doing parkour with at least more than 3 elements to use that could have been turned into a better than Ghostwire Tokyo in my opinion. All of this wasted potential. It's just such a shame. When I think about all the big games of 2022, I think I need to say Ghostwire Tokyo is the game with the most wasted potential right now. It doesn't mean it's bad or uninteresting, and it doesn't mean that I regret buying it just like I did with Dying Light 2. But Ghostwire Tokyo had the potential being one of the best horror games of all time, both visually and content-wise. Yet, it turned out to be pay $60 to get 40 hours of collectible gathering kind of game. If you're really into Japanese culture, its folklore and want to live in this atmosphere, I advise you to buy it. If you're just looking for an action game with horror elements, you better wait for some sale. As I rushed after the halfway of the game just to finish it and do this review, I felt heartbroken. Ghostwire Tokyo could have been a lot more.